What a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Yes, Lord. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer.
Sykes! Why you gonna throw that whip on me like that? You knows it would scare me. It's just like a snake, and you knows how scared of snakes I is.
Of course I knows it. That's how come I done it.
You ain't got no business doing it. God knows it's a sin.
If you such a big fool that you gonna have a fit over an earthworm or a bit of string, I don't care how bad I scared you.
Someday I'm gonna drop dead from some of your foolishness.
Dying over a bit of string would prove you the fool.
Another thing, where you put my rig? I feeds that pony. She ain't for you to be driving around with no bullwhip.
Ain't for me to be driving, so what if you feeds that pony? Ain't you my wife? Don't the preacher say what's yours is mine?
He also says what's yours is mine, but I don't see you doing no giving.
You sure is one aggravating black woman. And I told you time and again, keep these white folks' clothes out of this house. Next time I'm gonna kick him outdoors.
Sykes, I ain't for no fuss tonight. I just came from taking sacrament from the church house. Just trying to keep some peace in my soul.
Peace in your soul? You ain't nothing but a hypocrite. You just finished taking sacrament at the church house on a Sunday night, but here you is going to work on the white people's clothes. Ain't it's the Lord's Day of rest? You ain't nothing but an amen corner Christian. Singing, whooping, shouting, then come home and break the Sabbath with white people's money.
Sykes, you could grind the dirt into these clothes. How's I gonna get through by Saturday if I don't start on Sunday?
So what if you don't get through? Anyhow, they promised God that we ain't gonna break the Sabbath with white people's clothes. I ain't having it in my house.
This is my house I built out of my flesh. And everything in it, bought with sweat over a wash tub. I've been married to you for 15 years. I've been taking in washing for 15 years. Sweat, sweat, sweat. Work and sweat. Cry and sweat. Pray and sweat. That's what shelter feeding clothes you.
Don't give me no lip neither. Else I throw your clothes out, put my fist upside your head, and my boot through your wash tub.
My tub of soap suds would have filled your belly with victuals more times than your hands done it. Not tonight. I don't have patience for it tonight. That old big hip black woman you running with ain't coming in here to take her ease on things made from my sweat and blood. You ain't paying for nothing in this place. I'm gonna stay right here till I'm toted out foot foremost.
Well, you better quit getting me riled up, as they be toting you out sooner than you expect. Look at you, skinny, ugly, bad-tempered. I be so tired of you and you complain I don't know what to do. God! How I hate skinny women.
Well, if you hate skinny women, leave. I ain't gonna get fat with you in this house. If you tired of me, leave. You ain't brought nothing in this place but misery. Just leave and go to that big hip woman you've been sweating on and take your misery with you.
You're my wife. And then make this house mine. And I ain't gonna leave my house. And I ain't gonna live in it with you for much longer.
Him promise God. That man ain't talked to God in his life. Lord, I praise to you every day. I keep your commandments, and I walk the straight though it may be narrow. I can't hear your answers. When are you going to take this man from my house? When are you going to cut him out of my life? My God, Why art thou so far from helping me in the words of my word? Have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? We should never be discouraged. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Can we find a friend so faithful who will all our sorrow share? Jesus knows our every weakness. Take it to the Lord in prayer.
Hearing you ladies sing makes me think there may be angels missing from heaven. Evening, Sister Blossom. Miss Dealey?
Lying lips be an abomination to the Lord. Even lies be sweet. So watch your tongue, Thomas.
I'll leave you ladies to your business while I go beg forgiveness. Pansy, I'm going to be outside. Take your time. Let me know when you're ready.
We almost done here. We won't be too long. Have a little piece of Miss Delia's bread. Get thee behind me, Satan. Sister Delia, sometimes I think your baking is an instrument of the devil, sent here to lead me into temptation.
Sister Delia, don't pay no attention to that sinner. If that be temptation, I know she been giving in all day. Now me, I'm a faith living woman. I know your baking is my reward here on earth. You might be right. Pansy, this temptation will lead the faith off the true path.
Delia, it's wondering me how you managed to have pecan so late in the year.
I used the lesson that Joseph taught the Pharaoh. To use some, share some, and put some aside for tomorrow.
Amen. Well, ain't nobody can say Miss Delia don't pay attention to her church lessons. Miss Delia, is you all right? Is something the matter? It ain't nothing, Miss Delia. Just a bit of twine Blossom must use to top her cornbread. Blossom, you know better than to leave things lying about.
It's fine. I'm gonna be going though. I'll fix Sister Anderson her plate since her arthritis kept her from finishing.
That woman should have suffered with the arthritis. Me and sister would deliver a plate on our way home, but to despair, Sister Delia, you've been in your feast just before mission began.
Thank you, sister, but I have to get going. I have all the ironing waiting for me. If I don't set up tonight, then I'll fall behind tomorrow.
Take care, Sister Delia.
That woman should have more than ironing waiting at home.
I wish ironing was the worst she had waiting.
15 years in that house with enough tribulations to make Job cry surrender.
Ain't no peace in that house. At best, peace visited after they made their promises, but left once that man used his fist and ain't never brightened their doorstep again.
Sometimes I pray she would just leave that house.
Sister Delia built that house with her sweat and dreams. Every piece of furniture that she made with her hands out of water and soap, and every tree that she planted on her knees. You might as well say she should give away her arm.
She sweating over Washington while he spends all his money in Orlando.
While he rubbing his sweats on somebody else's
But
belly.
sister, this is God's house.
When I look at the life of that woman, I know God is a man.
Now don't be blaming God.
That woman ain't done Miss Delia no harm. That man she took born of misery and been pushing misery since the first day he drew breath. Sometimes I think God asks a lot of us women.
See, when a woman chooses a bad seed, she sure brings herself a bitter harvest. Now, Sister Delia's heavenly rewards will be plenty, but her wait here on earth, her wait until the final reaping, will be long and bitter.
I can't stomach to taste the pecan now. Thought of that man sidling up to me with a basket of Miss Delia's pecans done cut my appetite. Like any decent woman in this town would give him the time of day.
Even the ones that ain't decent turn him away. He had to go all the way up to a pocket to find someone to sweat on him. You may love your pecans, but you know it's better than take another woman's nuts.
Told him to take the pecans right back where he got
But
them.
yes, you did.
Because I know Sister Delia work hard for everything in that yard.
Yes, you do.
I reckon without Sister Delia's hands offerings, everything in that yard would be bitter with soap suds. Run him off with a little less tail in between his legs.
Since he brought that woman around, Sister Delia don't go nowhere with a head held high, except to go to church or to pick up laundry, trying to avoid that harlot. I can say that here, because it's in the Bible. Because God knows there be two things we won't catch that Jezebel doing.
What's that?
Going to church or working.
Looking at Sister Delia, it's hard to remember her and I the same age. For that man called her, she was a joyful thing. The Lord loveth righteousness, but does try the righteous.
The eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and his ears are open to their cry.
The righteous cry, and the Lord heareth and delivereth them out of their troubles.
Soon, Lord, soon. Are you ready to go, Pansy? I see Miss Delia leave a little bit ago. What did I do?
Evening, folks. Just saw old Delia Jones heading down the road on that old rig of hers.
Yep, hot or cold, rain or shine, just as regular as the weeks roll into months. If it's Saturday, Delia carries and fetches them laundry.
She have to if she wants to eat. Because nothing Sykes Jones do is gonna put something in her belly. That man ain't worth the shot in the powder it takes to kill him. Not to her, he ain't. It's too bad too high to sport her. She was a right pretty little tree. I denied the Pansy, but I'd admit to myself he hadn't beat me to it.
Too much knocking will ruin any woman. He done beat her enough times to kill 3 women's, let alone change their looks.
Mess up and move on to that mess.
How Sascha's stomach laying around with that godless woman gets me. I swear, if that 8-Rock could kiss a sardine can, I'd have thrown it out the back door way last year.
She give me the heebie-jeebies. When she laugh, she too stingy to open her mouth. She just kind of keep it. Like she is scared of too much air get loose and might help somebody. Can't see what he see in her no matter how bright the sun is.
Oh, she fat. That how come? He always been crazy about fat women. He had been tied up a long time ago. Could find one to have him. Did I tell you about him signing up to my wife?
Mine too. Bringing out a basket of pecans out of Miss Delia's yard for a present. She told him straight up where he could put them pecans. Ooh, I just wish I had caught him around there. I'd have made his hip catch on fire down that shell road.
I see him grin at every woman that passes. He used to swallow some mighty humps of humble pie around here before he got that for a woman he got.
Now, I can't call him out on that count. He ain't bothered my wife none.
No disrespect, Brother Elijah.
Yeah.
But Sister Mary was kind of old.
That ain't the reason. He likes him fat, and she didn't have enough of him to her own too.
Oh, she had enough for a man who knows how to do the whole
Delia was pretty as a speckle.
Oh, yes, she was.
15 years ago, she's the only one paid him any mind. Early on, he used to be scared of losing her so she could make him do some parts of her husband's duty.
That didn't go on for too long, because they never was the same in the mind.
He ain't fit to carry guts to a bed. Nothing but trash from a family of trash. Only thing worse than him was that father of his.
Father was mean as the devil, and the kid grew up ornery as hell.
Now, probably didn't know no better. As if someone had shown him some kind of kindness early on, things probably would have turned out different.
Miss Delia showed him kindness, and what she get for her troubles. Meanness, that's what there ought to be a law about here.
There ain't no law on earth that can make a man decent if it ain't in him.
Talking about the devil makes the day seem hotter. Come on, Bram, and get a melon out here and slice it up for your customers. We are all suffering from the heat.
That's right there, Bram. A watermelon is just what I need to cure my epizootics. Come on there, Bram. We all are steady customers, and you ain't set us up in a long time. I choose that long, bow-legged floaty.
With a kind in the dough, you all give me 20 cents and slice away. I need a cold slice myself. Yeah, and what you been? I'll leave you on my meat now.
Go on inside, honey, and see what you can find.
You need help out here, Bram?
Hello, Sister Blossom.
Hello, Thomas. How your wife doing?
Your sister's doing just fine, just fine.
Please be here.
I just going for some shade.
I know this ain't as fine as the stores you used to, but let's see what you can find.
Afternoon, Elijah.
Hello, Sister Blossom. My wife is dead. So no need to ask about her. But I could use some shade too.
Get whatsoever your heart desires, honey. Wait a minute. Have you ever had strawberry soda water? Bram! Get her 2 bottles of strawberry soda water, a quart of parched ground peas, and a block of chewing gum.
Trash.
Sister Blossom's ears are sharper than my best hound dog.
I learned early. Ain't no putting anything by her. Ain't that right, honey?
Those two be some piece of work. When God was handing out shame, them two was all squatting in some backfield somewhere. Soda water. Y'all have all Miss Dilly as much as them little spit. Where did Sykes Jones get that woman from anyhow?
Over a Poplar?
I guess they must have been cleaning out town when she left. She don't look like nothing but thrown away trash.
Crying shame you treat Miss Dilly so for a pair of thighs.
There's plenty of men that takes a wife like they do a joint of sugar cane. Now, it's round, juicy, and sweet when you get it, but then you squeeze and grind. You squeeze and grind and wring out every drop of pleasure in them out. Now, when you're satisfied that you have wrung it dry, you hate them for being a cane chew in the way, and you treat them just like you do a cane chew. You throws them away.
That man worse than something spit up from hell.
And there's nothing we can do as far as I can tell.
Say what you will, do what you want, but the devil take care of his own.
Now I want you to take a look around here. And it's a fine house. Think about how you make this nicer. I change it however you say. Anything you want, I get it for you. Sure is a fine looking woman. Fine, feeling woman. A woman to make a man feel like a man. You're like a fine raised hog, all meat. Lord, I do abominate skinny women. You're a fine tasting woman. Your tongue's sweet. That's why I love you. Sweet like a woman ought to be. That was ugly, mean. Her mouth bitter, so all I do is complain. She bitter like soap. As soon as I get her out of here, this house is yours. Yours and mine for all time. Everything belongs to me. You sure can't have it. Anything you want, I get it for you. You like it here, don't you? I told you I treat you good.
Oh.
Eyes ready.
Are we weak and heavy laden, cumbered with a load of care? Precious Savior, still our refuge. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Do thy friends despise, forsake thee? Take it to the Lord in prayer. In his arms he'll take and shield thee. Thou wilt find a solace there.
What about salvation and finally be the brother's turn to sing? Yeah. Sister Cleotha was in fine form today.
She was in some kind of form, but fine don't describe it.
Well, she is enthusiastic.
People shouldn't let talent guide their enthusiasm. Apparent Sister Cleotha's talent and enthusiasm is like yoking a donkey to an ox. You in for one uncomfortable ride.
It ain't so bad with Miss Delia that delete the section. Without Miss Delia, Sister Cleotha can't come within a mile of a note like she's the Israelites in the desert. Under Aaron, Lord, unruly.
Ooh, child makes me so mad I want to hurt about it.
Sister Cleotha may be 3 weeks behind the choir, but she don't mean nobody no harm.
Well, since I heard about Sykes letting that woman in Miss Delia's house, I've been so ornery and so disgusted of men, I can't stand to look at Thomas.
Now, child, you can't let other people's bad marriage touch yours. Thomas done and gonna do enough on his own to make you want to spit nails. They all do. So don't borrow Miss Delia's troubles on your own marriage.
Letting that woman in Miss Delia's house? If Thomas done that, I'd be a widow on the way to hanging.
That was some powerful singing. You men must have worked up an appetite.
No supper came at the end of our efforts, man. Give us our all. Tom said be right along.
Thank you for having me share your baskets. That although I can provide my meal, it ain't the same without the company. Man does not live by bread alone, but by the words of God and the companionship of his brethren.
You always welcome to us, brother alive.
Thank you, sister. Sister Pansy, how come it look like this fine day ain't right with you?
It's a blessed day, but my thoughts fly elsewhere.
Well, sister, your face saying where your thoughts are ain't a good place.
Just reflecting on the mysteries of God's ways. Thou prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemy. But I've been wondering why God will leave one of his own in the presence of her enemy. Why he don't move his servant from the danger, move the danger from his servant.
That's something to ponder, but we may never know, since the Lord's thoughts are not our thoughts, and his ways are not our ways.
Although the Lord may be abundant in his pardon, that is not man's way. Although he promises tribulation on the souls of wrongdoers, sometimes it seems that tribulation misses its mark.
Pansy, it's not our place to cry.
I ain't questioning. I'm trying to understand why that black woman's lot so hard. That woman is a good and faithful servant. She don't do nobody no harm. She goes out of her way to do good, but can't get no help from nowhere.
God's help will come. Like Daniel in the lion's den. Like Shadrach in the fire. God's help will come how and when you least expect it.
Fret not yourself because of evildoers. Neither be envious against the workers of iniquity.
But they should soon be cut down like the grass and wither as the green herb.
Well, how long is it going to take for that cut to come?
Pansy, you know I take my time with my cane choosing. I think these gonna be sweet. Did I do something?
I bring you something. Look in that box there, did you what I bring you? Pretty, ain't it?
Sykes, my God, you take that snack away from here. You got to. Oh, Jesus, have mercy.
I ain't gotta do nothing of the kind. Fact is, I ain't gotta do nothing but die. Ain't no use of you putting on there is making like you scared of that snake. He gonna stay right here till he die. He ain't gonna bite me because I know how to handle him. Ain't no use of him breaking his fang against your skinny leg.
Sykes, don't you keep that thing here just to scare me to death. You know I even fear the earthworms. And that's the biggest rattlesnake I ever did see. Kill him, Sykes, please.
Don't ask me to do nothing for you. Trying to be so damn astro-purious. No, I ain't gonna kill it. I think a damn sight more of that snake than I do you. Now that's a nice snake. And anybody don't like it can hit the grip.
I want you to take that snake away from him. You didn't starve me, and I put up with you. You didn't beat me, and I took that. But you didn't kill all my insides bringing that Satan in here.
Whole lot I care is how you feel inside or out. That snake ain't going no damn well till I get ready for him to go. And don't think I don't know two of my bullets be missing. If I catch you messing with my things, them beatings you done got ain't gonna be nothing compared to them beatings you gonna get.
I hate you, Sykes. I hate you to the same degree I used to love you. I done took till my belly is full up to my neck. I'm sick of you. I don't want to see you around me at all. You live with that woman all you want to. But I don't want to see you around me or my house. I hate you like I hate a suck-egg dog.
Oh, I be glad you hate me. I should have started even hanging on to me. I don't want you. Look at you, stringy old neck. You raw bony arms and legs enough to cut a man to death. You look like the devil's dog, baby, to me. You can't hate me no more than I hate you. Been hating you for years.
Your old black behind ain't nothing to me. With your big old ears flapping on each side of your head like a pair of buzzer wings. Don't think I'm gonna be run off from my house neither. I'm going to the white folks the very next time you put your hands on me. You've been pouring bitterness in my cup for years. And it didn't about run over.
You drink your bitterness and leave. But that snake stay where it is. Give me an ounce of tobacco, Bram.
Howdy, Sykes. I heard you got one of those rattlesnakes over at your place.
Jack Johnson used to keep a rattler. Don't know why exactly. Things got some before he could say.
Rattlesnakes ain't dangerous. Not unless you know how to treat them so they obey. They're like women.
Why you keeping it for?
My belt never worn out. Figured I'd make me a fancy one.
Why don't you just cut the head off and take your belt off of him? No needs to keep him rounds.
Got to fatten him up. I wants me a broad belt.
Keep him in the woods. You know Delia's scared of them creeping riders.
As far as I can tell, she's scared of a bit of strain. But she's usually willing enough to bundle her laundry. Delia only scared when she wants to be scared.
Still, if she don't like them
The pause and say, she my wife. I say she only scared when she wants.
How the hen fire did you catch that 6-foot rattler, Sykes?
He full of frogs so he can hardly move. That's how I eased up on him. A snake charmer. I know how to handle him. Shucks, there's nothing. Catch one every day if I so wanted. And if they acting up, I just use my heavy hickory club to lean real heavy on his head to stun him. That's the best way to charm a rattlesnake. You all just don't understand them diamondbacks like I do.
Seems like Sykes used the same charm on a rattlesnake as he do on women.
Was that Sykes just leaving? That man meant for hell, and I wish he'd get going there. He got my pansy so riled up, she taking it out on me. I'm about to take all the doors off the hinges so she can't slam nothing no more.
Lost him ain't too pleased, none. That man beats Delia, it's us that get punched.
We ought to take Sykes. And that stray woman he is down in Lake House Swamp and lay on the rawhide till they can't say Lord have mercy. He always was an overbearing jackass. But since that white one from up north and teaching him how to run the automobile, he even got bigoted.
You treat Miss Delia worse than slave overseas from slavery time.
He too evil to live, and we all kill him.
You two wanna turn night riders and decide who should live and who should die. Leave him to
I
God.
wonder if Miss Delia can wait on God's time.
Don't be blaspheming. God's time ain't man's
That
time.
man worse for Miss Delia than Night Riders out of hell.
And ain't nothing we can do as far as I can tell.
Say what you will, do what you want. But the devil take care of his own.
matter, Satan? Why are you quiet? Guess even the devil must rest. Guess the only thing that'll make that black man do as he's told is to threaten to call down the white folks. If not by love, then by force. Ooh, he wouldn't fetch nothing around here to save his rotten neck. But he sure can't run through what I bring in quick enough. He ain't told it off 9 high to half a box of matches. And he had that woman in my house again. Wait. Oh, Lord! Oh, Lord, when it's coming for my help, I've done the best I can do. I have walked in thy integrity, and I have trusted in you, Lord. But this is too much.
Mrs. Snake, a belly full makes your tail quiet? Guess you won't be needing that no more. Your woman's ugly, mean, and cause you pain. Your woman's ugly, mean, and cause you pain. Get rid your woman, start over again. Got me a new woman, fine as she can be. Got me a new woman, fine as she can be. My woman's sweeter than honey from a bee. Got me a fine house, keep me from the cold. It's gonna be my house till I'm dead and gone. Shouldn't let my matches with her. What? Oh God, why ain't you where I left you? I thought you'd be where I left you. Light, I need light.
Delia, where are you? Delia, help me. Help me. Bitch, help me. Delia, is that you? For God's sakes, get help. I've been bit. I've been poisoned. Blessed Savior, thou hast promised, thou wilt all our burdens bear. May we ever, Lord, be bringing all to thee in earnest prayer. Soon in glory bright unclouded, there will be no need for prayer. Rapture, praise, and endless worship will be our sweet portion there.
I heard that snake almost swallowed him alive.
Heard he could only swallow one leg.
Guess his Hickory Club stopped working his charm.
Heard it so bad the snake couldn't keep him down.
Right, throw them up.
Big Diggy never had love for no snake.
Now she got a reason to be thankful for one.
Nobody seen that snake or that woman.
Not since it did what it needs to do.
Disappeared back in hell and took that woman with him.
Ain't seen hide or hair on her since the snake got sight.
They hardly long gone.
The workers of iniquity have fallen.
They are cast down and shall not be able to rise.
If you dance with the devil, he's got to pay for the two.
Because when the devil takes one, he takes back two.
Sock spent his life dancing with the devil.
He was the devil since he first drew breath.
Well, like they say, the devil take care of his own.
And so does the Almighty.
Amen.
When it dropped below zero last night, I thought I'd better send Frank out to make a fire. No use catching pneumonia with a big case on. But I told him not to touch anything except the stove. And you know Frank.
This feels good. Well, come up to the fire, ladies.
Oh, I'm not cold.
Now, Mr. Hale, before we move things about, you explain to Mr. Henderson just what you saw when you came here yesterday morning.
By the way, Henry, has anything been moved? Is everything just as you left it yesterday?
It's just the same.
Somebody should have been left here yesterday.
Oh, yesterday. When I had to send Frank out to Davenport for that man who went crazy, I want you to know I had my hands full yesterday.
I know, Henry. Well, Mr. Hale, tell now just what happened when you arrived here yesterday morning.
Well, Harry and I had started to town with a load of potatoes. We came along the road from my place, and as I got here, I said, I'm going to see if I can't get John Wright to go in with me on a party line telephone. I spoke to Wright about it once before, and he put me off, saying folks talk too much anyway, and all he asked was peace and quiet. I guess you know about how much he talked himself, but I thought maybe if I went to the house and talked about it before his wife. Though I said to Harry that I didn't know as what his wife wanted made much difference to John.
Let's talk about that a little later, Mr. Hale. I do want to talk about that, but for now, just go on with what happened when you arrived at the house.
I didn't hear or see anything. I knocked at the door, and still it was all quiet inside. I knew they must be up. It was past 8 o'clock. So I knocked again, and I thought I heard somebody say, come in. I wasn't sure. I'm not sure yet, but I opened the door. And there in that rocker sat Mrs. Wright.
And what was she doing?
She was rocking back and forth. She had her apron in her hand and was kind of pleating it.
How did she look?
Well, she looked queer.
How do you mean queer?
Well, as if she didn't know what she was going to do next. And kind of done up.
How did she seem to feel about your coming?
Well, I don't think she minded, one way or other. She didn't pay much attention. I said, how do, Mrs. Wright? It's cold, ain't it? She said, is it? And just went on kind of pleating at her apron. Well, I was surprised. She didn't ask me to come up to the stove or to sit down, but just sat there, not even looking at me. So I said, I want to see John. And then she laughed. I guess you would call it a laugh. I thought of Harry and the team outside, so I said a little sharp, can't I see John? No, she says, kind of dull-like. Ain't he home, says I? Yes, says she, he's home. Then why can't I see him, I asked her, out of patience. Because he's dead, says she. Dead, says I? She just nodded her head, not getting a bit excited, but rocking back and forth. Why, where is he, says I, not knowing what to say. She just pointed upstairs like that. So I got the idea of going up there. I walked from there to here. Then I says, why, what did he die of? Died of a rope round his neck, says she. Just went on pleating at her apron. Well, I went out and called Harry. Thought I might need help. We went upstairs, and there he was, Why?
I think I'd rather have you go into that upstairs, where you can point everything out. Just go on now, the rest of the story.
Well, my first thought was to get that rope off. It looked. But Harry, he went up to him and he said, "No, he's dead all right, and we better not touch anything." So we went back downstairs. She was still sitting that same way. "Has anybody been notified?" I asked. "No," says she, unconcerned. "Who did this, Mrs. Wright?" said Harry. He said it businesslike, and she stopped bleating of her apron. "I don't know," she says. "You don't know?" says Harry. "No," says she. "Weren't you sleeping in the bed with him?" says Harry. "Yes," says she, "but I was on the inside. Somebody slipped a rope around his neck and strangled him, and you didn't wake up," says Harry. "I didn't wake up," she said after him. "We must have looked as if we didn't see how that could be. For after a minute," she said, "I sleep sound." Harry was going to ask her more questions, but I said maybe we ought to let her tell her story first to the coroner or the sheriff. So Harry went fast as he could to River's place where there's a telephone.
What did Mrs. Wright do when she learned you went for the coroner?
She moved from that chair to this one over here and just sat there with her hands held together and looking down. I got a feeling that I ought to make some conversation, so I said I had come in to see if John wanted to put in a telephone. And at that she started to laugh. And she stopped and looked at me, scared. I don't know, maybe it wasn't scared. I wouldn't like to say it was. Soon Harry got back and Dr. Lloyd came and you, Mr. Peters, and so I guess that's all I know that you don't.
Well, I guess we'll go upstairs first, and then out to the barn and around there. Now, Mr. Peters, you're convinced there was nothing important here? Nothing that would point to any motive?
Nothing here but kitchen things.
Well, here's a nice mess.
Oh, her fruit. It did freeze. She worried about that when it got so cold. She said the fire would go out and all her jars would break.
Well, can you beat the women? Held for murder and worrying about her preserves.
I guess before we're finished, she'll have something more serious than preserves to worry about.
Well, women are used to worrying over trifles.
And yet, for all of their worries, what would we do without the ladies? Dirty towels. Not much of a housekeeper, would you say, ladies?
There's a great deal of work to be done on the farm, Mr. Henderson.
To be sure. And yet, I seem to know of some Dixon County farmhouses that don't have such towels.
Those towels get dirty awful quick. Men's hands aren't always as clean as they might be.
Loyal to your sex, I see. But you and Mrs. Wright were neighbors. I suppose you were friends, too.
I've not seen much of her of late years. I've not been in this house. It's been more than a year.
And why is that? You didn't like her?
Oh, I liked her well enough. Farmers' wives have their hands full, Mr. Henderson. And then...
Yes?
It never seemed like a very cheerful place.
No, it's not cheerful. I shouldn't say she had the homemaking instinct.
Well, I don't know as Wright had either.
You mean they didn't get on very well?
Oh, no, I don't mean anything. Just that I don't think a place be any cheerfuller for John Wright's being in it.
I want to talk more of that a little later. I want to get the lay of things upstairs now.
I suppose anything Mrs. Peters does will be all right. She was to take in some clothes for her, you know, and a few things. We left in such a hurry yesterday.
Yes, but I would like to see what you take, Mrs. Peters. And keep an eye out for anything that might be of use to us.
Yes, Mr. Peters.
I'd hate to have men come into my kitchen, snooping around and criticizing.
Of course, it's no more than their duty.
Duty's all right. But I guess that Frank must have got a little of this on when he came out to make the fire. I wish I had thought of that sooner. Seems mean to talk about her for not having things slicked up around here when she had to come away in such a hurry.
She had bread set.
It's a shame about her fruit. I wonder if it's all gone. Oh, there's one in here that's all right, Mrs. Peters. Yes, this is cherries, too. I declare, I believe that's the only one. She'll feel awful bad after all her hard work in the hot weather. Why? I remember the afternoon I put up my cherries last summer.
Well, I must get those things. She said they were in a basket by the stove. My, it's cold in here.
Wright was close with his money. I think that's why she kept so much to herself. She didn't even belong to a ladies' aid. Guess she felt she couldn't do her part. You don't enjoy things when you feel shabby. She used to wear such pretty clothing and be lively. Back when she was Minnie Foster, one of the town girls singing in the choir. But oh, that was years ago. This all you was to take in?
Well, she said she wanted an apron. Funny thing to want, for there's not much to get you dirty in jail, goodness knows, but I suppose just to make her feel more natural. She said there was in the top drawer of this wash stand. This here. And her little shawl. She said it was hanging by the stove. Here it is.
Mrs. Peters.
Yes, Mrs. Hale.
Do you think she did it?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, I don't think she did. Asking for her little shawl and her apron, worrying about her fruit.
Mr. Peters says it looks bad for her. Mr. Henderson can be awful sarcastic in his speech, and he'll make fun of her saying she didn't wake up.
Well, I guess John Wright didn't wake up when they were slipping that rope under his neck.
No. It's strange. It must have been done awful crafty and still. They say it was such a funny way to kill a man. Rigging it all up like that.
That's just what Mr. Hale said. There was a gun in the house. He says that's what he can't understand.
And Mr. Henderson said coming out that what was needed for the case was a motive. Something to show anger or sudden feeling.
Well, I don't see any signs of anger around here. The table's wiped to here. I wonder how they're finding things upstairs. I hope she had it a little more tidied up there. You know, it seems kind of sneaking, locking her up in town and coming out here trying to get her own house to turn against her.
Well, Mrs. Hale, the law is the law.
Yes, I suppose it is. You better loosen up your things, Mrs. Peters, or you won't feel them when you go out.
She was piecing a quilt.
It's her log cabin pattern. Pretty, isn't it? I wonder if she was going to quilt it or just knot it.
They wonder if she was gonna quilt it or just knot it.
Frank's fire didn't do much up there, now did it?
No, not much.
I don't see as there's anything so strange or taking up our time with little things while we wait for them to get the evidence. I don't see as it's anything to laugh at.
Of course, they've got awful important things on their minds.
Mrs. Peters, look at this. Here, this is the one she was working on. But look at this sewing. All the rest of it's been so nice and even. But here it's all over the place. Why, it looks as if she didn't know what she was about.
Oh, Mrs. Hale, what are you doing?
I'm just taking out a stitch or two that's not sewn very good. Bad sewing always makes me fidgety.
I don't think we ought to touch things.
I'm just gonna finish up this end. Mrs. Peters.
Yes, Mrs. Hale?
What do you suppose she was so nervous about?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if she was nervous. I sometimes sew awful queer when I'm just tired. Well, I must get these things wrapped up. They may be through sooner than we think. I wonder where I could find something to wrap them in.
In the cupboard, maybe.
Why, here's a bird cage. Did she have a bird, Mrs. Hale?
Why, I don't know as whether she did or not. I've not been in this house for so long. There was a man around last year selling canaries real cheap, but I don't know as whether she got one. Maybe she did. She used to sing real pretty herself.
Seems strange to think of a bird here. But she must have had one, or why would she have a bird cage? I wonder what happened to it.
I suppose maybe the cat got it.
No, I don't think she had a cat. She's got that feeling that some people have about cats, being afraid of them. When they brought her to my house yesterday, my cat was in the room and she got real upset and asked me to take it out.
My sister Bessie was just like that. Queer, ain't it?
Why, look at this door. It's broke. One hinge is pulled apart.
Why, it looks as if someone must have been rough with it.
Why, yes.
I wish if they were going to find any evidence, they'd be about it. I don't like this place.
But I'm awful glad you came with me, Mrs. Hale. It would be lonesome for me being here by myself.
It would, wouldn't it? But I tell you what I do wish, Mrs. Peters. I wish I had come over here sometime when she was here. I wish I had.
Of course, you were awful busy, Mrs. Hale. Your house and your children.
But I could have come. I stayed away because it weren't cheerful, but that's why I ought to have come. I've never liked this place. Maybe because it's down a hollow and you don't see the road. I don't know what it is. But it's a lonesome place and always was. Wish I had come to see Minnie Foster. I can see now.
Of course, you mustn't reproach yourself. Sometimes we just can't see how it is with other folks until something comes up.
having any children makes less work. It makes a quiet house. And right out to work all day and no company when you did come in. Did you know John Wright, Mrs. Peters?
Not to know him. I've seen him in town. They say he was a good man.
Yes. Good. He didn't drink. And he kept his word as well as most, I guess. He paid his debts. He was a hard man, Mrs. Peters. Just to pass the time of day with him was like a raw wind that gets to the bone. I should think she would have wanted a bird. But what do you suppose went with it?
Oh, I don't know. Unless it got sick and died.
You weren't raised around here, were you? You didn't know her?
Not till they brought her yesterday.
Well, come to think of it, she was kind of like a bird herself. Real sweet and pretty, but kind of timid and fluttery. How she did change. I tell you what, Mrs. Peters. Why don't you take her quilting to her? It might take up her mind some.
Well, I think that's a real nice idea, Mrs. Hale. There couldn't possibly be any objection to it, could there? Now, just what would I take in? I wonder if her patches are in here, and her other things.
I expect this has all her sewing things in it. Oh, what a pretty box. It looks like something somebody would give you. There's something wrapped in this piece of silk. Oh, Mrs. Peters.
It's the bird.
But look at it. Look at its neck. It's all other side, too.
Somebody wrung its neck.
Well, ladies, have we decided whether she was going to quilt it or knot it?
We think she was going to knot it.
Well, that's interesting, I'm sure. Has the bird flown?
We think the cat got it.
Is there a cat?
Not now. They're superstitious, you know. They leave.
No sign of anyone having come from the outside.
Not a sign.
Their own road.
Yes.
Well, let's go up again and put it together piece by piece. It had to have been someone who knew exactly where they slept.
She liked the bird. She was going to bury it in that pretty box.
When I was a girl, my kitten, there was a boy took a hatchet and before my eyes, and before I could get there, well, if they hadn't held me back, I would have hurt him.
I wonder how it would seem to have never had any children around. No. Raven like the bird. A thing that sang. She used to sing. And he killed that too.
Now, we don't know who killed the bird.
I knew John Wright.
It was was an awful thing that was done in this house that night, Mrs. Hale. Killing a man while he slept. Slipping a rope around his neck that choked the life out of him.
His neck. Choked the life out of him.
We don't know who killed him. We don't know.
There had been years and years of nothing. And then a bird to sing to you. It would be awful. Still, after the bird was still.
I know what stillness is. When we homesteaded in Dakota, and my first baby died, after he was 2 years old, and me with no other then.
How soon do you suppose they'll be through? Looking for the evidence.
I know what stillness is. The law has got to punish crime, Mrs. Hale.
Wish you had seen Minnie Foster. She wore a white dress with blue ribbons and stood in the choir and sang. I wish I had come over here once in a while. That was a crime. That was a crime. Who's going to punish that?
Now, we mustn't take on.
But I might have known she needed help. I know how things can be for women, and I tell you, Mrs. Peters, it's queer. We live so close together, and yet we live far apart. We all go through the same thing, but it's a different kind of the same thing. I tell you what. Don't tell her her fruit was broken. Tell her it ain't. Tell her it's all right. And take this in to prove it to her. She may never know whether it was broke or not.
My, it's a good thing the men couldn't hear us. Wouldn't they laugh? Getting all worked up over a little thing like a dead canary. As if that could have anything to do with... Well, wouldn't they laugh?
Maybe they would. Or maybe they wouldn't.
No, Peters, it's all perfectly clear except a reason for doing it. But you know juries when it comes to women. You know, if there was some definite thing, something to show, something to make a story about, a thing to connect up with this strange way of doing it.
Well, I've got the team around. Pretty cold out there.
I want to stay here a while by myself. You can send Frank out for me, can't you?
All right.
I want to go over everything. All right, I'm not satisfied that we can't do better.
Do you want to see what Mrs. Peters is going to take in?
Oh, I guess it's not dangerous things the ladies have picked out. No, Mrs. Peters doesn't need any supervising. For that matter, a sheriff's wife is married to the law. You ever think of it that way, Mrs. Peters?
Not just that way.
Married to the law. George, I just want you to come here a minute. We ought to take a look at these windows.
Ah, yes.
We'll be right out, Mr. Hale.
Well, Henry, at least we found out she wasn't going to quilt it. She was going to... What is it you call it, ladies?
We call it Not It, Mr. Henderson.
Why, miss, I can't believe you've come. When the matron told me I had a visitor, I couldn't imagine who it could be, for I've told my attorney not to come back, and Alice Peters can't get away just now. She's expecting another baby this spring. When I first saw you sitting there, I mistook you for one of those ladies pays 25 cents to tour the White Palace of the West. That's what they call it, you know. It's grander than Anamosa State Penitentiary. And it is like a castle in a storybook. The limestone was quarried by the prisoners themselves, the men, I mean. Funny to think about, building your own prison walls. Have you taken the tour? You should before you go, though it's selfish of me to say so. The money goes to buy books for the library. Did you know there's a library right within this building? We go every week and may check out any book we please. I'd forgotten how much I love to read. It made John Wright irritable to have a book of any kind in the house. He said that reading time was lost time that you couldn't make up. I hadn't read a book in years, and now I get one every week. Sometimes the matron reads to us aloud, and I cherish that because it reminds me of my mother reading to me. On Thursday evenings, the matron encourages us to talk to one another. I haven't had much to say as of yet, but talkers need listeners. You wouldn't believe what these women have been through. Some of them are harlots and thieves. The laudanum addicts are lucky to have ended up here and not at the asylum. I was addicted to it when I came in. Did you know that, miss? But now I'm shed of that wickedness. There are two of us serving life sentences. Me and a 15-year-old girl, made pregnant by her own daddy. She says that he strangled the baby as soon as it was born, and that's why she stabbed him with a butcher knife. The matron is a good woman, strict but kind. She does not judge us, says that what matters is how we live our lives from here on out, that the root word of penitentiary means to feel regret, but that we must not be eat up by whatever it is that brought us here. That girl that killed her daddy sits next to me in chapel every Sunday. The women have the whole balcony to ourselves. It's nice to be in church again. That girl loves the hymns as much as I do. We have a choir, and we sing for the evening service. I love the sound of the women's voices raised up together. It is a sound I had dearly missed. Matron says that if there's interest, we can start a quilting group and sell the finished quilts in the prison shop to buy more notions. I volunteered to teach those who don't know how. Some left home too early to learn. There is one woman says that life on the streets is not conducive to quilt making. But now that she's a lady of leisure, she's willing to learn. Oh, I don't mean to shock you, miss. I just have to tell things plain. Isn't that what you try to do with your writing? Tell things plain. Miss Peters saved your articles for me in a scrapbook. She showed them to me during the trial, and when I came here, I asked her to keep them for me. Oh, don't say that. You did a real good job of writing what you knew. Miss Peters writes me real regular. And Martha Hale, I've known her for so long, wrote to say that she'll come see me here as soon as she gets settled in Iowa City with her sister Lucy. I wrote her back and said, even if she never comes to Anamosa, I'm going to think of us as neighbors again. Her husband's gone now. Martha's taken it real hard, and her family too. It must have been terrible for Harry to see that tractor turn over on Lewis and not be able to make it right. And now a good man's gone before his time, and a good woman's mourning him. I remember Lewis Hale as a young man, always trying to stand next to Martha in choir when we all still lived in town. I hadn't seen him, these many years, though he did come by that one time to ask my husband if he wanted to go in together on one of those new party line telephones. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if he'd come by a day sooner than he did. Miss Peters visited me every day in the county jail. One time she told me about her kitten, killed by a neighbor boy just out of spite. Her voice was so soft I could hardly hear her, but her eyes were like brimstone. It was strange to see angry eyes in the face of a kind woman. And she sat with me in the courtroom all during the trial, said it was her duty as the sheriff's wife, that being married to the law didn't mean she couldn't stand by me in my time of trouble, seeing as how there was no one else to do it. A lot of women came to the courtroom, dressed in their pretty spring bonnets like it was church. The bonnets were so gay, but the eyes beneath them were like ice. It was as though my neighbors were angry with me, not so much for what I was accused of doing to John Wright, but for what I was doing to them, bringing their own sadness out into the courtroom. Miss Peters held my hand and told me to pay them no mind. I saw you there every day in the front row, next to Lewis and Martha Hale. Is it queer to say that at first your eyes felt cold, but then they seemed to warm? I was glad to have the three of you at my back. It was like having sunshine to melt all that ice. Well, listen to me, chittering like a chickadee. You've bobbed your hair. It suits you. Yes, well, I asked the matron to cut my hair. John Wright used to grab hold of me by my braid. So I was glad to see it lying in the basin when she was done. Thank you. You're kind to say so. I feel well. And I don't mind wearing this gray dress. It's just the color of my mother's eyes. Strange what you remember and what you forget. I remember the color of her eyes, but not the sound of her voice. For a long while, I hardly remembered the sound of my own. Is that what you've come for, miss? To hear the rest of the story that the law wasn't interested in? Are you going to write some more for your newspaper? You quit that job. Well, who's going to read your writing now? Well, I think you're right. People will love to read your short stories. And a girl who can write need never be silenced. I know what it's like to be silenced. But here, today, I see no harm in telling you the story. I was my parents' pride and joy. Born after my father returned from the war, the only one of my mother's babies that lived. She was not well. but the house was full of books and words and music. She and I used to sing together, and my father said we sounded like nightingales on the edge of a wood. You don't hear nightingales on the prairie unless you buy one and keep it in a cage. I'd be grown and married before I realized that Mother was my father's nightingale in a cage. She loved poetry, especially William Blake. I can still recite, "Tiger, tiger, burning bright, in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry?" That first Sunday, when John Wright came calling, I was almost 20 and practically a spinster. I thought him very handsome and able. He'd come from Illinois not long before and already had a homestead with a house on it. He said straight out that he had come to church to find a good Christian woman to be his wife, and he saw me singing in the choir in my Easter dress, the white one with the blue ribbons. And he said that he loved my singing. What a man tells a girl he's courting does not always endure. Still, he swore that he wanted me to have and to hold, to be his helpmate, and to bear him sons. Father was ready enough to let me go, but Mother asked me to wait another year. Still, I thought myself old enough to leave my mother's side, so I married John Wright on Midsummer's Eve, and his house in the hollow of his fields became my home. It was not until we dragged my hope chest over the threshold that I realized that you couldn't see the road from the kitchen window. There was a chill in those rooms that had nothing to do with night coming on. In his haste, John Wright tore my new silk petticoat, one I had made myself and was very proud of. I was mortified to learn what was expected of me. But in time, you may be scandalized to hear this, I came to take some pleasure in it. To my great sorrow, Mother was gone before the year was out, and Father too shortly after. Going through her things, I found her journal. It turns out she was a writer just like you. She never spoke a word about what it was my father did to her behind closed doors. Reading about it later, I began to wonder how a woman could be so wrong about the man she chose to marry. Of all my mother's things, I kept only a red silk box containing her silver hair combs. And I grieved my losses in my husband's arms. He sent me to the doctor to get a prescription for tincture of opium, laudanum, to ease the pain of my monthly cycles. It helped me to relax into my wifely duties. But I lost every pregnancy in those early years. One at the butter churn, 2 hauling water, 1 in the chicken yard, 2 chopping kindling, till at last the doctor said that I might need months of bed rest to bring a baby to term. What farm wife can spend that much time off her feet? Still, John Wright remained attentive, called me his little bird, said we'd try again, and we did. For a time, he chopped the kindling and he hauled the water. But we lost the babies anyway. After the last one, the doctor came, and when he left, I fell sick with a fever. Later, he told John Wright that I would live, but I was clearly not meant to bear children, and he cautioned my husband against planting his seed inside me again. So after that, we lay side by side without touching. And in the years that passed, the space between us grew hard and silent. That's when my husband began to say that he couldn't tolerate any noise in the house at all, that he could not bear my singing, that I was not to speak unless I was spoken to, and he used the back of his hand to prove that I should take him at his word. On our wedding day, my husband promised that we would be church-going people. But in time he took to leaving me at the Ladies' Aid meeting, while he escorted a young widow home to her stepson's house. In the months that passed, he was much in her company of a Sunday afternoon. One time I slipped out of the Ladies' Aid meeting and I went to speak to the minister. I told him about the silence in our house enforced by John's right hand, the lack of relations between us, and my husband's interest in the widow. And the preacher told me to keep my sorrows to myself and to speak no more against my husband. When I left his office, John was waiting for me. The whole way home, he berated me for being alone with another man. When we drew up into the yard, I told him he was slandering me. And given his own behavior, he was a hypocrite as well. And he hit me with the butt of the buggy whip and he pushed me out of the wagon. And that was the last time I asked my husband to take me to church. I came to know solitude and silence equally well. I did not begrudge John Wright the time he spent in town, even if I knew he was in her company. I did everything I could to keep his house, but I could not please him. One time he threw a cast iron skillet at me and it missed, but it struck the cook stove door and it dented it. He said because it was my fault for making him angry, he would not fix it. So the door never closed, and the oven never heated evenly again. He would come in for his supper and he would curse me for lingering to serve him. It got to where he would lock me upstairs in the bedroom while he ate his meal. Usually food calmed him, but if it did not, I was in for a thrashing before the dishes could be done. One summer evening, it grew so close behind that locked door that I could not catch my breath. I opened the window and climbed over the sill just to get some air. His supper done, John Wright stepped into the yard to light his pipe, and he turned and he saw me sitting on the roof and he bellowed like a bullock, and then he ran for the barn to fetch some rope. So I clambered back over the sill, thinking it would calm him down to see I was not trying to escape. But he kicked the door open and he struck me a blow that left me senseless. And when I awoke, he had tied me by a slip noose to the bed frame. And he tied my hands behind my back. And he left me thus till morning. And he kept the rope in place to use whenever he was vexed. My husband said that he always slept sounder after he'd given me a beating. It was I who slept less and less and grew more haggard and homely. The girl I had been died, and only her shabby ghost remained. But then last summer, I was putting up sour cherries. John Wright had gone into town to a meeting at the Grange, and a man came down the road with a buggy full of bird cages. He stopped in front of the house and he knocked at the door, but I didn't answer it. So he came round to the window and he spoke to me through the glass. "Canaries, ma'am," he said. And I could see the cages full, the feathers bright as the sun. I opened the window to hear the sound they made. I said, "That's a fine song your birds are singing. But my husband is close with his money and he's sensitive to sound and he would never accept such an extravagance." "Oh, ma'am," he said, "keeping a little bit of sunlight through the winter months is no extravagance." Oh, and I knew him to be right. He said, "As the nights lengthen, the birds will settle into their molt and cease their singing until the days grow long again. That if you cover the cage a little earlier each night, the birds will settle into their molt. And by the time they're singing again and praise up their new feathers, my husband would be out working in the fields." Oh, miss, was there ever such a salesman as could sell a dream like that to a ghost woman? I had such a longing for something in the house that sang. He told me the price and my heart dropped. But then he pointed to my sunflowers and said I had enough food to match the bird's small appetite, so it was only the cost of the bird in the cage. And that's when I remembered my mother's silver hair combs. I brought them to him. And he looked at me real hard. And he said he'd take only the one, I should wear the other in my hair. And then he handed in a birdcage through the window and turned his buggy toward the road, leaving me with that little beating heart of a thing singing in the cage. And I began to wonder what on earth I had done. My husband would never let me keep the thing unless I could quiet its song. So I went to my hope chest. It was empty except for that torn silk petticoat, and I made from it a silk curtain, and I covered the cage over, and the little fellow quieted. So I took the cage and I put it in the pantry. And then I brushed my hair, and I put my mother's silver hair comb in it. And that afternoon, I made John Wright's favorite meal, a soup of bitter greens and bacon. And when he came in to supper, he saw the hair comb. And he asked me why I was gussied up. To please you, I hope. But he just looked at me. And he wanted to know what I was about. So I told him about the bird. And he said, "You let a stranger in my house?" And I said, "No, I hadn't let him in the house. We did all our business through the window." And then he took and he shook me by the shoulders for spending his hard-earned money. And I said I hadn't spent his money. I'd given away one of my mother's hair combs. And that's when he tore the other one out of my hair. He said it made me look silly. And besides, if it were of any value at all, it belonged to him. And I told him he was right. And then I did something I'd never done before. I got down on my knees. And I begged him to let me keep the bird. And he said that over the years I had proved a hard woman to break, but that he liked seeing me on my knees. And I could keep the bird as long as he did not have to hear its foolish song. Then he pocketed the hair comb, and I imagine he gave it to her. So all I had left of my mother was a red silk box. But I had purchased the right to keep the bird. Now that he was really mine, I named him Buddy. And never was the thing any trouble, only joy. As the leaves began to turn, I kept the silk curtain close by in case John Wright came in early from the fields. It was just as the salesman said. Without sunlight, Buddy settled into his molt and ceased his singing. By the end of February, I lived for the return of Buddy's song. One morning, John Wright got up early to make the wagon ready to go to town. He wanted to get that new seed catalog from the feed store. And I think he intended to have his noonday meal with her. I had fixed his breakfast, done the dishes, put some bread on to rise, but the blasted stove wouldn't heat properly, so I kept putting off the baking. I could not wait for my husband to leave the house, so eager was I to bring Buddy's cage out and draw back that curtain. I wanted to give him as many hours of sunlight as I could. His feathers were coming back in real pretty. Oh, he was a sight to gladden the heart. At last I heard the door slam and the creak of the wagon as John turned the team toward the road. I brought the cage out and I took the curtain off. Buddy had grown so tame he would sit on my finger and let me stroke the feathers on his back. I whistled to him, and he warbled right back at me, and I was so delighted that I left off petting him, and he let go my finger, and he flew right up to the top of my kitchen shelves, so high that there was none could stop him from singing his spring song. Oh, oh. But I was frantic to get him back inside his cage. So I went into the pantry to get a stool so I did not hear John Wright when he returned to the house. He pushed through the kitchen door and he saw me standing on the stool, whistling to Buddy, trying to coax him back into the cage. And he said, "What are you doing? Playing a game?" And at the sound of his voice, Buddy took off and he flew over to the elbow pipe on the stove, though it must have been hot, for he didn't stay there long. I said, "Buddy never gets out. And it'll take me just a moment to catch him if you'll just close the kitchen door. But John Wright just stood there glowering at me. So I jumped down from the stool and I slammed the door myself, and that startled Buddy, so he flew over to the windowsill, and there I was able to cup him in my hands and bring him back and put him in the cage. Happy to be home from his grand adventure, he sat on his little swing and he sang. But then I covered the cage over and he settled right down. And John Wright said, "Is that what you do when I'm not here? Play with your parakeet instead of doing your chores?" I said, "It's not a parakeet." "I don't care what it is. It's gone," he said. And then he tore the silk curtain off the cage the same way he'd torn my silk petticoat. And without the curtain, Buddy sang out again, "Pretty as you please." And John Wright, he opened that door and I lunged at him and he struck me on the back of the head and he pushed me to the floor. And then he reached in and he grabbed that little feathered thing. And he took it between two hands and with a twist, between one note and the next, he brought an end to Buddy's song. And then he dropped the limp bird into the kindling box. And I just started bawling. And he said, "Hush, or I'll give you something to cry about." But I couldn't hush. And by the time he was done, I knew he would sleep real sound. And then he turned and he went back out the door without ever saying why he'd come back. I crawled across the floor to my sewing basket and I got the scissors and I cut a little piece of the curtain for Buddy's shroud and I wrapped him in it. And I put him inside my mother's red silk box and then I put the whole sad thing away in my sewing basket. I tried to make myself useful for the rest of the afternoon, working on my quilt squares. But the tears kept coming and I couldn't see to stitch straight. I never did get my bread baked, and I was sore all over. So I took some tincture, and I went upstairs, and I lay down on the bed, and I closed my eyes. And I remembered my mother's favorite verse, "Tiger, tiger burning bright, in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry?" And I opened my eyes. And that's when I saw the slip noose tied to the bed frame. When John Wright came in to supper, I served him a soup of bitter greens and bacon. He ate a whole big bowl full of it without comment, so it's doubtful he tasted the laudanum. He sat at the table and his eyelids grew heavy. He said he was so weary he didn't think he could make it up the stairs, and I said, "Lean on me, and I'll help you up to bed." And he sat down on my side, and I pulled off his boots, and then he stretched out and went to snoring. It wasn't hard to get the rope around his neck. And his arms were heavy with sleep, so he struggled not at all. Had he been awake, he would have found out that I was stronger than he knew. When it was done, I lay down in the stillness next to him and slept. Martha Hale buried Buddy for me the day after I went to jail. She and Alice Peters stood up for me in their own way, taught me that I could stand up for myself, that with John Wright gone, I need not live the rest of my life on my knees. So now you know it all, and you can let go your questions. You did me no harm by printing the words that you wrote. So lay the ghost of that fear and keep on writing. I've told my lawyer to make no more appeals. There's nowhere else I want to go besides here. I like it within these walls. I've never lived anywhere that wasn't a man's prison, have you? At least here, I belong to myself. Is it awful to say I don't regret being John Wright's widow? Does that mean I'm beyond saving, do you think? Oh, good. I'd hate for anyone to be beyond saving. Oh, now here's the matron. I'm glad you came, miss, but I understand if you don't come back again. Now that you've heard the story, you know that this isn't the bad part. The bad part's over. So don't fret about me anymore, miss. Really. I sleep sound. I sleep sound. And sometimes I sing.